All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is for my EDS with Dr. Evans. And I basically have a team of 5th grade teachers, and then I also have a special education teacher here who attended the cultural diversity training. And we're going to kind of summarize because I have other clips where we did the data and the digging and all that. So I brought them together so we could summarize this information. And we're going to kind of go through our questions. So one of the first questions I have is about the data. So we talked a lot about 3 strategies, and the 3 strategies were providing feedback, organizational management, kind of for the kids, for them to organize their thoughts or organize their clutter, and then graphic organizers. Well, no?
Goal setting.
Goal setting. So those were our 3, and when we used those 3 because we talked about how students of poverty either don't hear positive comments and positive feedback, have difficulty organizing their thoughts, or they don't really see outside their future, so they have difficulty setting goals. So if you guys can share with me which one you chose and how it worked out with that student.
Well, I'll go first. I chose goal setting because one of my students who was she struggled completing assignments, completing homework. But in her heart, she was like, I really want to do well. I really want to do well. And so once I pulled her and we talked about what we could do so that she can be successfwill, she felt very liberated and like, yes, I can do this. Very sincere, just really. And so, we would have this check-in time like every week. Did you do your homework? Did you complete assignments? And she was able to see that visual of, yes, I'm doing that, so that she could see, like she set goals and she could reach them. So I thought that was really
that was good, because I think the way we had like this big overarching goal, but then we had to create little goals for them to see it. So because our students have difficulty understanding how to get to the goal, so we made small steps in order to do that. So that's awesome that worked for her. And how did yours go?
Well, the student that I have chosen was Stephen, and he needed organizational skills because he was never completing his assignments.
Okay.
So we focused on that. So I figured, okay, this book was always in disarray. So I decided to use closed notes to help him, streamline to give him time to catch up.
Okay,
which
that's
that was
good.
really helpful for him. And also we had to use a data one to see, well, how much time was he using for extended time.
Okay.
And that wound up seeing us like, what was really the problem? Are you just being slow, or are you just, taking your time, But eventually it wound up working well for him because he started to improve in his writing skills and in getting his assignments completed in a timely manner.
Okay. And before we move on, did you see like numerical improvement in their scores
or
grades? Okay.
Yes, that was the thing. And she was able to like come to me. She was so proud of herself. Diamond was so proud of herself. Like, look, Miss Hall, I got this.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And who was your student?
So mine was Joshie.
Okay.
Joshie was my class runner.
Okay.
Because Joshie had very low self-esteem. And so I said, I need to target that in Joshua to help him academically and behavioral-wise and socially.
Okay.
So I chose the feedback strategy.
Okay.
And so I developed some sentences that he could be pretty much assured that he would have from me. So I would have lots of check-ins with him.
Okay.
How are you doing? How did this do? Do you have any questions? I like how you answered that question.
Okay.
Positive praise and encouragement.
Okay.
And throughout the months that we were using this strategy, I realized that his self-esteem was building up.
Awesome.
He did not run any longer.
Okay, good.
He stayed in the classroom.
That's good. That's good.
And he started feeling better about himself.
That's
so
good.
Ultimately, it helped with his academics as well. But
Okay.
he really became very positive in the classroom, so he's doing much better.
Okay, that's awesome. And I do want to note that we selected these students. We actually brought a list of Title I students for them to select from. And so all of these students are students who are on free and reduced lunch, who kind of fit some of the characteristics. And we'll talk a little bit about those characteristics later. And you have a different situation. So yours is more of a non-traditional setting, and that's why I wanted you here to speak to that as well.
Kindergarten, 5 years old, he would come in the morning and you couldn't get close to him when he tried to speak to you because he never brushed his teeth. So what I did was positive feedback, because I think in his situation It was where they were rushing to get to work, to get here, to get there, so mom just kind of threw his clothes on, threw him in the car, and sent him in. And he didn't even know how to hold the toothbrush
Wow.
when we first started.
Training.
So we set up a little chart, and he would come in the morning. And in the beginning, it was almost a fight to
Yeah.
have him do it. You know, I think if his mom ever did, I think she did it for him, you know, just to get it done really quick. So in the beginning, it was just a fight, but we had these little Minion stickers, which he loves the Minions. So, you know, he had a little chart that he could fill up with all these Minion stickers, and it helped that the rest of the kids in the class were encouraging him also.
Gotcha, gotcha, that's
To,
awesome.
you know, oh, get another sticker, get another sticker, you're gonna fill up that page.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
by the end of it, he was able to put the toothpaste on himself and do a pretty good job. You know,
Yeah.
you could have a conversation with him and you weren't blown away.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know we talked, you guys actually mentioned some of the characteristics of students of poverty even through your discussion now. And we had a little bit of that when when you guys went through the workshop and we met these fictional students.
Yes.
They're actually here at our school, but I changed the name, changed their voices, and gave them all the same, Taylor A, B, and C. And we learned a lot about what characteristics of students of poverty, middle class, and then upper class look like. And then when we work with students of poverty, what were some of the characteristics of the students that you ended up selecting that actually matched what we were learning? So what were some of those characteristics that seemed pretty similar to what we were learning in the PLC in the class versus the students that you chose?
I think, Diamond moved around a lot.
Okay.
And there were a few, mom, basically a single parent household. So she moved around a lot. And mom was, pretty much working. So a lot of times Diamond, may have had to get herself together,
Yeah.
And I think because of that, her esteem suffered a little bit, just not having that feedback where somebody was engaging her. And I definitely saw that in the classroom. But once I pulled her to me and, kind of engaged her on that level and made her feel special, she just opened up so much more.
Yeah.
Because, it was like, wow, somebody's looking at me.
Yeah.
Somebody's paying me some attention. But it just did so much for her.
Yeah. And it was different types of feedback because Diamond was an attractive girl, so she gets
Yes.
told that she's pretty. But when
Yeah.
we're talking about feedback, in the positive part,
Right.
her self-esteem wasn't coming from necessarily her exterior.
Right.
She didn't feel good about what she knew and
Right.
what she thought and all of
Exactly.
those things.
Yeah.
And so there was a shift in Diamond. There was definitely a shift in Diamond. Unfortunately, very much like many of our students of poverty, Diamond's no longer with us
Right.
anymore.
Yeah.
But I do remember that shift when she started feeling really proud of the work,
Yes.
which was very different than feeling proud of, the things that people will say. You're a
Right.
cute girl, but she was proud of the work.
Yes.
Anybody else use the feedback one and want to kind of share
Well,
the
with
characteristics of
the
that child?
single mom
Okay.
that you showed, I saw that in Joshua's situation.
Okay.
Because he felt like he had no one.
Mm-hmm.
He's actually playing the dad in the household.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't have a father that was there, so he had no relationship. So I could see that where the low self-esteem, the sense
Mm-hmm.
of abandonment
Yeah.
was coming from. And him feeling like he had to pull his own weight. He had to be there for himself. So I could see how that was really affecting,
Yeah, it's interesting how many of those characteristics were similar.
Yes.
Like we could really look at
Yeah.
those and see how similar they were. And you used which one did you use?
For, I'm similar to what you were saying with the parent.
Okay.
Like I say, but I felt like Stephen had low self-esteem
Mhm.
because a lot of time, it just took him a while. Like he wasn't sure which direction he was going. So a lot of times, you have to do a lot of encouragement. Like you can do it, stay focused, and a lot of times, the encouragement helped him a whole lot because you have to really, encourage him a lot, give him self-esteem, build up his self-esteem.
And y'all sound like some of you guys used a little combo. So it was like some feedback, but then also organizing.
Right.
Some, helping them. Okay, this is how we get to this goal,
Right.
and let me help you organize yourself so you can get
Right.
to the goal. So you kind of had to use a little combo of some of
Yes,
those
You
strategies.
did.
And I heard your strategy with the chart. So that he had a visual, and it sounded like you got the whole class on board.
Yeah.
Providing
They
him some
encouraged him.
positive.
And that was on them, that was on the class, because, you see a sticker come out and they're all looking to see what it is, but then they realize what it was for. And I think with him, he never had the opportunity, I think, to hear positive feedback because he was never given that opportunity. It's always rushed in his household so that, they're rushing to get him done and get out of the house. But I think it was good for him to be able to do the task and then hear that he was doing a good job and seeing that it's working. So.
Can I add, I know with Diamond, she would, be absent frequently.
Yeah, absolutely.
And once we started the goal setting, it became obvious where she was like, no, I need to be at school.
Yeah.
I need to be at
That's
school. I am
awesome.
working on this
Wow.
goal.
That's awesome.
I am working on earning better grades. So I would see her attendance improve, her grades improved. It was just amazing how one little thing.
Yeah. Do you know that brings up something in my thoughts because Joshua started becoming a leader in the class,
That's
in
awesome.
the school. He was
That's
going
awesome.
out there to the cars and helping
He sure. I know who
unload
you're
stuff.
talking about.
Oh, wait,
yeah,
that's the Joshua that
That's
you're talking about?
because when you
Oh
kept
my
saying
goodness.
Joshua, I thought it was a different Joshua. But you're right.
That's
He did
him.
go out to the car. Oh,
Yes. And you see how
He
far
was-
he's
yes,
come?
he's come a long
Wow.
way.
He was amazing
Yes.
with
Yes.
my kids, the special ed kids. He always made it a point. Can I take them down? He would walk them down, make sure they got to their rooms, and he would have a conversation with them, which is a big deal for a fifth grader to engage with the special ed kids, because most of the time they're just like,
Yeah.
wow, that's amazing.
That is awesome. That's because I remember though, and I know Stephen. Stephen's still here.
Hanging in there.
He's hanging in there. But that's really good. And a lot of the things we learned about. So, we hear about the dysfunction in the household. We hear about them not hearing anything positive. A lot of the parents feel like they're burdened, so they don't have, high self-esteem. They get told very negative things through the day. So we talked a lot about the differences in generational poverty and et cetera. So we use those 3 strategies. And those 3 strategies we pulled from Ruby Payne, and that was one of the books that we kind of just highlighted throughout that session. One of the things that was new to me and that we shared and we discussed, and I think this was kind of interesting for all of us, was the concept of a food desert. Now, this is not really data related, so it might be going off a little bit, but we did talk a little bit about a food desert and some of the areas that our students come from and how that ends up affecting them when they get to school. So let's kind of talk a little bit about what a food desert is and what we kind of learned what that is and how that affects children.
Well, if you just right down here, if you drive down 78, there must be 20, 25 different fast food restaurants in a mile area, and there's not one grocery store.
Not one grocery store. And the one that we had in this area has closed down. And so a food desert is almost like a place where people capitalize on people of poverty because they don't set goals and they don't necessarily set financial goals. It's very easy to spend $1 here on a menu, on a fast food menu, than there is to plan for groceries for a month or 2 weeks or whatever. And so they just go through a drive-through. They can make it through the end of the day. I have $5. I'm gonna spend $5, and I can feed people with this amount of money.
The nutritious, to help them throughout the day.
Yeah.
To keep them motivated.
And a lot of it is because of convenience.
It's
Right.
convenience, and we all kind of fall into it too.
Right.
Yeah.
But the effect of that ends up being something that's a little bit more when you start talking about, a lot of times the misconception is that they don't eat and they don't have this and that. They eat, so you don't see it, but they're putting bad stuff in their body all the time, which then we're not processing the same. And one of the facts that we just remember, and you guys were from the first semester, so it'll be a little bit different, was eventually a lot of these things, when you talk about generational poverty, it affects them to where there's 13 IQ point difference.
Wow.
13 IQ point on average difference. So we have a lot to overcome when we start talking about Title I. The other thing we talked about that's not necessarily data related, but that was a big part of this learning process, was the toxic charity. Do you guys remember that? They're from first semester. Toxic charity was the concept of us. You remember now?
I think, is this the one where they, it's almost like enabling them?
It is.
Where they look for, you give them things and it's like, oh, you're supposed to give me this. Now I
Exactly.
want this. Is that what you?
Yeah, so the concept, and we do this as teachers, and I had to change my thought process on that, but we give them candy and rewards that are tangible, but we're not really giving them the skills and the tools to get out. So did any of that thinking kind of change what you might have done in the classroom in terms of how you reward students?
Oh, absolutely. I think, and yes, I was guilty of that as well, because, I mean, that's what,
I think we
that's
all
what we
are.
do.
Yeah.
You know, that's what,
You want to give them, you know,
Yeah.
here's, you know, I
Because
used to
that's
do the
what they would work
Smarties
for,
or whatever, you know.
yeah, because that's what they work for. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to do that. But now it is more about goal setting. You know, let's see how many compliments we can get.
Yeah.
And then if we get this many, then, you know, we will, you know, have a celebration or something where, you know, you get more computer time or something like that. You know.
What you had mentioned about giving the tickets and then having no homework or
Yeah.
you know.
So making,
That's
and
right.
you know, there was a couple of people that told me in their classroom they did make that shift.
Yes.
And we talked a lot about going from that candy to actually everything being focused on academics.
Yes.
So we want to reward you for your brain.
Yes.
You know,
Right.
so we give you a ticket for you answering questions as opposed to for behavior, because if you stay focused, you can answer questions.
Correct.
If you answer questions, then you get, you know, replace your grades, add bonus points,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. So we talked a little bit about that. And guys, was there anything else that you took away from the experience or that you want to share?
It just made me look at things definitely in a different light. You know, it's like the things that I thought I knew about myself and how I was engaging students. It just enlightened me on, you know, it made me more aware
Yeah.
of how I should be engaging
Yeah.
students,
Yeah,
you
I'm
know,
with you with
at
that.
all
Totally.
levels.
More
Yeah.
sensitive
Yes.
to their background
Mm-hmm.
and how it affects them, and it's not all, you know, it's just not black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And that a lot of things come into play when they come in a mood. You don't know what that mood is from. It may not just be an attitude, but it may be, you know, they didn't have a good morning because their mom was not there, their dad was not there. You know, other things come into play. So it just made me more sensitive.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we take things for granted.
Yeah,
We
we
assume,
do.
Yeah.
We do.
because our household, you know, pretty much, you know, running regularly,
Right.
that their life is doing this, you know, running the
Exactly.
same fashion, but it's not always so.
Yeah.
And like you say, it becomes more, you need to be a little more sensitive.
Yeah.
And knowing their background.
Yeah.
And what type of children you are dealing with. You
Yeah.
know, to help you to be a better person towards them.
It's made me realize that you don't even really need to know what their background is. You just have to be more aware that some children need that immediate gratification. You can't just assume that it's going to be, well, you're doing your work, that's what you're supposed to be doing, and kind of let it go. You know, whether they need it or not, it's good to give them that positive feedback.
Yeah. For me, I had a lot of takeaways during this process. Number one, last year I was brand new to the staff, and so it was, you know, presenting that type of material was interesting. But my takeaways were we all have a story. And so, you know, as I was able to share some of my story, and then we started talking in general terms about, you know, some of the things that we learned. I learned so much from other people, and it surpassed color boundaries. You know, it was a lot of things that surpassed. It was just, we all have a story, and sometimes we get so caught up in our own story that we're not as, you know, attentive to what someone else may be doing. But the other thing I took away, there was a lot of takeaways through the research, was that as much as you can think you're doing a great job, there's always that kid that needs attention, and you have to be so direct with that kid. And, you know, there's, as much as I can say, I taught it, I know I did it, you know, you should have gotten it, that child may need special attention, and it takes a lot of work, like you're exhausted.
Yes.
And I think, you know, being in a Title I population and being able to perform in the way that you guys do is a huge testament to the work that you guys put in, because there's a lot of people that don't apply to come to Title I schools. And there's a lot of people who, you know, have a difficult time working in environments where it's high minority and high poverty, but we're still able to be very successful. And so we do a lot of the strategies naturally, and so I did appreciate you guys taking the time to then take it that next step further. So thank you guys so much for
Thank you.
coming in and kind of helping me get this on camera. Hi,
Yeah.
Dr. Evans. And I appreciate it. And you guys have a wonderful day.
All right,
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.